Chris.
Hello, Hillary.
Are you excited to be here?
I'm always excited to be here with you.
So this is our May episode.
May? Are we already in May?
We're already in May.
Jeez Louise.
So as today it's raining, April showers bring May flowers, so we're bringing a wonderful episode.
You are a Mayflower, Hillary.
Well, thank you.
Not like the ship.
No. Yeah, I think that had some diseases on it, so I don't really want to be associated, but thank you.
No commentary.
So we have a very special guest today.
We do, a Napa Valley icon.
Yes, I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
She not only has her own winery, but is well known for being at Chapelet, Staglin, Longmeadow Ranch, was 2011 Winemaker of the Year for the San Francisco Chronicle. Do you want to?
Yeah, and one of the 8 UC Davis class, the big class that everyone talks about all the time. And a good friend, Cathy Corison.
Woo! Welcome.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
And you just got off a plane.
I knew both of you, and I didn't know either of you did this.
Not many people do. It's okay.
It's relatively new.
Our marketing branch hasn't taken off yet. Yeah. That's all.
It's a very authentic project with lots of poor production quality, but it's very authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good historical reference for someone studying wine way down the road.
One day the St. Helena Library will be playing our voices overhead in the wine area.
God, I hope not.
It'll be great.
But we've gotten it's been really cool to sit with some very iconic folks in Napa and get their take on not only the police log, which is important, but also wine and Napa Valley. So thanks for joining.
So glad to be
Excited.
here.
Yeah. And you just got back from a trip in Greece?
Yes, we were up in Macedonia, northern Greece, where they make beautiful wines from a variety that I can barely pronounce, Xinomavro.
Wow.
But it's kind of Nebbiolo-like, Barolo-like, and I've loved them for years. And we were up there visiting with Rose and Grace, who are involved in the winery now. So
very nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, and tonight we have the February 2025 Police Log, and then we have 2011 in honor of the Chronicle year.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very cool, Hillary. And what are we drinking tonight?
We are drinking the 2021 Corison Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. It's the label I established my project on 38 years ago.
Wow.
We just put our 38th vintage in the barrel. And this is the 35th release, the 21.
Very nice.
Cool. How did that happen?
Wow. What inspired you to get into wine? This is the story.
It was pure serendipity. There's no explaining it. I was 19 years old, studying biology at Pomona College, and on a complete whim, I took a wine appreciation class. Non-credit, and it grabbed me by the neck, and I've never looked back. I graduated 2 years later. 2 days later, I was in the Napa Valley, and this was 1975. Napa Valley was poor. There were 30 wineries here, 12 of which had been founded 3 years prior.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow.
Very, very different. All the grapes went to the co-op, and probably all of that went to Gallo, and it was just starting to happen. In 1965, 66, 67, Robert Mondavi and Don Chapelet founded their wineries, and it was just waking up from a really difficult first half of the 20th century.
Yeah. Still crawling out of Prohibition.
Prohibition, 2 world wars, and a depression.
Yeah.
It was literally, the wine business was basically shut down until the mid-'60s. I get here in 75, 1 year before the Paris tasting. And I feel like I've been holding on for dear life ever since.
What did you notice between 75 and then post Paris tasting?
Well, I was barely here. The first year I was here, I was working half-time, and I knew I wanted to go get my master's degree at Davis, but I had to clean up some chemistry that I had managed to avoid. And so I went over the hill as a concurrent student in that intervening year and started taking the wine classes, but also the chemistry. And so it was the next year that I was actually in the program. So that was the year that the Paris tasting happened.
Wow.
So it's really hard to say, except that it catapulted us onto the world stage in a way that was, in a lot of ways, dumb luck. There's a lot of good wine made all over the world. But it wound up in, I think, Life magazine or something, and it just exploded. And Napa Valley's never been the same. We're just lucky.
Yeah, very much.
I mean, we grow really good grapes, but
It's true. So your first job, let's see. So after Pomona, UC Davis. I won't quiz you on the amount of great folks that were in the UC Davis class of yours, but you had some really notable people in there.
yeah,
And,
among
that was your
them
start.
Don Consgard and
Nice.
several others.
Mm-hmm.
We were a very big class as a master's cohort of 8 people.
No way.
Yeah.
And then your first job out of Davis was Chapelet?
No, in the harvest in 1978, I had just finished my thesis, so I was finished with school, and I was an intern at Freemark Abbey in 1978. Because I had finished my degree, I stayed there for 8 months, which was really valuable because harvest is just a snapshot, and even though I had a master's degree in winemaking, all I could do was try to not make any mistakes. And I at the end of harvest, I'm not sure I could have told you exactly what they did, but by being there for 8 months, it really got me sort of oriented and settled, and went from there to my first winemaking job at a little tiny winery called Yverdon on Spring Mountain, which later became Terra Valentine, and now is one of the Jackson family wineries. But I had no business running a winery at that point. You know, a master's winemaking enology degree is a really good foundation, but it does not teach you to make wine. So I did that for 2 years, and then after that I had a bit of a portfolio, and from there I went to Chapelet for all the 80s, and which was a 30,000 case winery. Again, I was 26 years old when I started that job.
In charge, doing everything.
Of Chapelet. 30,000 cases, already very well known for Cabernet.
Wow.
I had no business. And then none of us did. We all got out of school, and there was so much opportunity. It was just exploding, and there weren't enough little old white guys around.
I read somewhere, and this may be just internet, but I read somewhere that at one point a job was declined to you because they were worried you weren't tall enough. Is that true?
No, it wasn't my height. It was my gender.
Gender.
Interesting.
In fact, Freemark Abbey. My intention, they hired an intern from Davis every year, and I really wanted that job. I knew I wanted to be in the Napa Valley, and I wanted to do that between the 2 years of my master's degree. In fact, Larry Langben, the winemaker, hired me for the 77 harvest, only to have the owners have to take it back because I was a woman.
Wow.
They would not have a woman in their cellar. But in those days, that year, 1978, was the first year women ever hauled hoses in the Napa Valley as cellar rats. I bottled all summer with a woman who worked in 78 at Inglenook. And she parlayed that into a union job and made real money. Back in the day, I was paid something like $4 an hour or something. And inflation doesn't take care of all of that. So yeah, it took 2 years to get that job.
Wow.
The next year, Larry Langben went to the owners and said, "I'm hiring Cathy," and he did. And the silver lining to this, I try to be really careful telling stories, because one of the owners that blackballed me in 77 got me my first winemaking job at Yverdon. It was Brad Webb. He was the kind of consultant there, and he got me my first winemaking job.
Well, you proved everybody wrong.
Excuse me?
You proved everybody wrong in the best way.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, but I think that's
probably weighed 90 pounds in those days too. You know?
Well, I mean, what a compliment for someone to initially say no and then come back around. I think that just...
Yeah.
That's huge.
Very nice.
Cool. Do you have any fun
Sure.
logs to kick us
Well,
off with?
let's start off, man. Let's see here. We've got a pretty good series here. Monday, February 5th, 6 in the morning. A caller was upset because his neighbor on Tainter Street idles his truck for 10 minutes before he leaves in the morning. And then the next day, February 6th, 6:22 in the morning, caller said a neighbor on Tainter Street keeps starting his old truck and running it for 15 to 18 minutes, usually at 5:45 a.m. The caller didn't want a police response, was just looking to call for informational purposes. And then again, at 12:06, a caller said a neighbor on Tainter Street had been idling his Ford F-150 for 18 minutes in the back of his driveway, and the area was filling with fumes. Caller was notifying police for informational purposes. So, something going on at Tainter Avenue.
I think all the neighbors got together for coffee, and they're like, well, you call it this hour, and I'll call it this hour.
Someone has got a truck issue on Tainter.
I have at 6:19, a vehicle crashed into a residential unit at Silverado Orchards on Pope Street. A resident who was new to Silverado Orchards mistook the gas pedal for the brake and crashed into a vacant first-floor apartment. The driver was okay and not a DUI. Police officers, firefighters, and building inspectors responded. The vehicle was removed. The vehicle inspector red-tagged the vacant apartment and the vehicle crashed into, as well as the second-floor desk where a support beam had been broken. No one was hurt or displaced.
Wow,
but I bet that apartment you can get a great deal on right now.
Yeah, it's very open floor plan.
Yes.
My dad lived there for 4 years.
Really?
As he was getting on.
Yeah. It's actually a great spot.
It's
I
a good
think
spot.
it's a very nice place.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's very nice. Yeah.
They do a good job.
Good food.
Davey Leiter lives there, and Davey has always been like, so he drives the bus, he moves grapes, he delivers grapes for people, and he loves it. He's like, no, it's
What
great.
a fun job.
It's so many people to talk to, and anyway. So,
Cool.
if you need grapes delivered, call Davey.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. This question might be jumping into stuff we want to talk about later, but watching the progression of Napa Valley, what do you think is the best thing that's happened and the worst thing that we've seen?
Well, I think I always knew that we could make Cabernet as well or better than anybody in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fact that we've been recognized ever since the Paris tasting in 1976 as being one of the best, it's been really gratifying, really,
Mm-hmm.
to have the world notice the wines we make.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I sell my wine. We only make 3,000 cases, but we're in 18 different countries.
Wow.
Not very much, just a little bit here and there, but it's just amazing. And when I got here in 75, I think no one would have ever imagined the profile the Napa Valley has worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst thing, gotta be careful.
Hillary loves her pits and peaks.
I do
so
love a pit and peak.
She loves the highs and lows.
So what's the worst thing that's happened?
It can be like a positive worst.
It's
like
it's
at a job
a
interview where you're
positive.
like, I just worked too hard.
Yeah, it's a positive worst.
What about consolidation? If I can throw
Consolidation.
that in, yeah.
Consolidation is a challenge
Mm-hmm.
because I believe that really good wine can be made by committee.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that great wine can be made by committee. So I think that it matters. I think we've got to be farmers. We're really farmers. There's just a fermentation between the grapes and the wine.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as we remain farmers, Napa Valley is going to be just fine.
Cool.
That's good.
I like that.
I like that too.
Go with that.
Yeah.
So your approach to winemaking has always been, how would you define your approach and your style? And
Great grapes make great wine, period.
cool.
So I spend most of my time out in the vineyard, and for the last 7 years, we're doing all our own farming. I actually manage those vineyards. Historically, I would manage them, but I would have vineyard management companies come in and help with the work.
Mm-hmm.
Now we peopled up a little bit, and we literally do everything short of harvesting because we're just not big enough. We've got to hire bigger crews. But my crew splits their time. It's a very European model. Splits their time between the cellar and the vineyard,
Nice.
which is so important because the grapes get the vineyard gets what it needs when it needs it. I always used really good top vineyard management companies, but they manage thousands of acres, and everybody needs the same thing at the same time. So it's been a huge. I can see it in the wines, the fact that the grapes get what they need when they need it.
And timing is so important in both viticulture and winemaking, right?
It's everything. And my wine is lower in alcohol than most Napa Valley Cabernets, so it's very important to me. We manage the canopy within an inch of its life. We work on it all season because I need to have fully ripe grapes at lower sugars because I've never de-alcoholized a wine in my life. So they have to be fully ripe.
So how canopy-wise do you do that? Do you
it's getting the right.
more, or?
I don't ever remove leaves.
Okay.
I remove laterals.
Got it.
And historically only on the morning sun side, and then really all the laterals in the morning sun side. And then the afternoon sun side, we would go through and take some of them out, but aware that the sun can be beastly in the summer and then fall on the afternoon sun side. Fast forward to the last 5 or 6 years, I started to realize that often I'm waiting for seed lignification when I want to pick. Everything else is lined up, but the seeds are still green. And of course, the seeds go into the fermentation. And so it's very important to me that they do turn woody. And what I've started to experiment with a while ago and now do routinely is after veraison. The grapes don't sunburn then. They can shrivel if the water status isn't right. But after veraison, I go through and remove all the laterals on the afternoon sun side, and immediately it's heat. ETS did a bunch of work on this, and it's heat that lignifies the seeds. And so it's just been, it works like a charm.
Nice.
In 2 or 3 days, they're lignified.
Because everyone always says when Cathy picks, we'll wait for another week or two and then we'll pick.
Yeah, I pick weeks before most.
24, 25? What's your bricks?
In a perfect world, I pick at 24 bricks.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't want to pick. Every year is different. Mother Nature comes up with something different every year.
Yeah.
But yeah, that always was the old saw. You know, Cathy's picking. I'll go out and sample.
Yeah, exactly. John Attitude always says that. Well, when Cathy picks, I'll go. And he always picks early too. So, but yeah, it's good.
Earlier.
Yes.
Just a trendsetter.
Well, let's pour this. Let's get into it. Nice.
While you pour, I'll read a fun log.
Good.
This is 6:30 in the morning. An old wooden canoe was found near the spillway of the lower reservoir. Police took report.
The wooden canoe.
Just a wooden canoe.
Wow.
Someone was, I guess, going down the river.
Very nice.
I'm not really sure.
Let's see if I have one here.
I have some about dead chickens, but that's kind of
That's
depressing.
sad. No.
Let's see. Police were told to be on the lookout for a pickup with major front end damage heading down Silverado Trail from Calistoga. Oh, here's a fire department one. February 1st, police got a noise complaint about lights in a generator associated with fire department training exercise on Madrona Avenue. They'll be okay.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. The color on this. Wow.
I love the 23s.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. There's nothing else blended.
I mean, that color is really, really beautiful.
It's so deep.
Yeah. So a lot of people,
the 21s. This is a nearly perfect vintage.
Yeah. So a lot of folks struggle for that extraction, that color, and a lot of folks wait much longer, right? Or they use enzymes or whatever. What's your secret to getting a good, beautiful color like that early?
Fully ripe Cabernet, farmed right and picked right on the Rutherford bench. Historically, we could call it the Rutherford bench. Is inky and complex and aromatic. I never use the word extraction because fully ripe Rutherford bench grapes ooze color. They ooze flavor. And it all comes out. I want it to come out early when there's not a lot of alcohol around. So I get it quite warm in the early part of the fermentation. And it just, the juice turns dark even before it starts to ferment. There's so much color, and I'm sourcing mostly older vineyards that have scraggly clusters of small berries, and they're fully ripe and black. And
Yeah, that was the first thing I noticed. It was just like
back to great grapes
dark
make
and-
great wine, period.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do to make the wine better than the grapes that come in the door.
Yeah. And you've always been mostly known for cabs, but have you ever experimented with other varietals? You guys do a few other blends that are not cab.
Well, I goof around
Yeah.
with a couple of other things. I make 100 cases of Riesling just for fun, not
Cool.
from the Napa Valley. I make one of our estate vineyards is, we call it Sunbasket, but I sourced that vineyard for over 30 years before we bought the vineyard, and originally shared it with Schaefer. We would each take half the Cabernet, then there were 6 short rows of Franc, and they would take the Franc. They became all estate a long time ago, and I started to source the whole vineyard, and that's when I started to make Cabernet Franc. I didn't single vineyard label it because I didn't own it until 2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
We hadn't blended the Franc away. We hadn't blended anything away of the 14 when we bought it in January of 15. So the first vintage to be vineyard designated was the 14.
Got it.
Sunbasket Cabernet Franc.
Very nice.
4 barrels. It's tiny. So really just, my letterhead says Corison Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. And I'm a Cabernet Sauvignon chauvinist.
I like it.
Yeah.
Nice. Did you know that when you, well, obviously through Chapelet, that was the major focus, and then when you were looking
at
for your
Chapelet, we had Merlot, we had Riesling up there, Chenin Blanc, we had Gamay. Everything
I
changed.
guess I always just thought Cabernet when I thought.
Well,
Chapelet.
that's what they were already most famous
Yeah.
for, but and now it's mostly Cabernet Sauvignon up there for obvious reasons. But when I got here in '75, there was Riesling and Calistoga and Cabernet and the Carneros. You know, that was a silver lining to phylloxera. As in the '90s, we were able to scooch varieties more where they belonged, and a lot of it. Chenin Blanc, I miss making that wine. It was old vines terraced above the Chapelet's house. It's long gone. It's Cabernet now. They could never charge enough for it to make it make sense.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful. Really
I
beautiful.
love a Chenin Blanc.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, it's becoming fashionable again for good reason.
Well, it's like these old vineyards we were talking about. It's just so hard to keep them in the ground, but their history and
Yeah.
and cabs are hard to
Yeah, our
keep around for that long.
Our
But
Kronos vineyard is 54 years old.
wow.
Planted in 1971.
So you bought Kronos, which is where the winery is, in the 90s?
95. The
Okay.
last day of 95, we closed escrow.
Nice.
So the first Kronos Cabernet was the 96.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Very nice. And what
It's gonna be a
went
while.
into your decision-making process when you were obviously at Chapelet and deciding that you wanted to do your own thing? How'd you
Well,
find
I've been
it?
there a long time. Yeah, I was there for 10 vintages. And toward the end of my tenure there was a wine inside my head that needed to get out. That's the only way I can describe it. And it was not a mountain Cabernet. Those are some of the best Cabernet vineyards in the world up there. But the wine I had fully formed in my mind was a Cabernet Sauvignon that was powerful. It's going to be powerful no matter what you do with Cabernet. But it's much more interesting at the intersection of elegance to me, and I've been chasing that all my adult life. So I had to go down to bench land, which is just our jargon for the alluvial fans. Your family vineyard is classic bench land. I knew I had to go down there to make this wine that was in my head. And this wine was big and powerful, but it was also had good snappy acidity. It was aromatic. And I think this is a good example. It had tannins that felt like velvet. The tannins in the mountains are very, very different, and that's not necessarily bad, but it's not what I needed to do. So I had to come down to the bench to start this project in 1987. I was still at Chapelet. I did 2 more vintages there, all the while juggling And then 2 years later, it came time to sell the wine. I'm sure you've run into that. And I could no longer be running a 30,000 case winery, and
on the road.
And so I started to consult on the side for Staglins and Ted Hall at Long Meadow Ranch and Fritz Maytag at York Creek to make all the ends meet, because the wine business is extremely difficult.
Yes.
And so we were pulling on our bootstraps as hard as we could. It took a quarter century for Corison Winery to be a going concern, a successful, profitable business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the long term, the long game.
Wine is.
Yeah.
On every level, wine is a very long game.
And so now your daughters are both involved, Grace and Rose.
So grateful.
So
I never could let them know how much I wanted that, because they had to run away screaming, and they did. Rose ran off to study engineering at Harvey Mudd, and Grace went to Syracuse to study acting and has a BFA in acting. But it's really interesting. They grew up here. Both you did, I think.
Yep.
And you don't realize what a bubble it is, and how beautiful and wonderful it is. And so it's really when they got away that they started to see more clearly how cool it is.
And once our friends start talking about all these wines and they start saying, "Oh, I recognize these names.
Yeah.
Hey, this is cool."
Yeah, your mom does.
Right?
What?
Or when you're sitting at a menu and you open it, you're like, oh,
I know these
I know
names.
those people.
That's my mother. So they've both circled back. It was accelerated by COVID. They were both in New York City. Rose was dancing. I think you danced with her in high school.
Ballet class, yeah.
But she finished her engineering degree and went to New York City and studied ballet at Alvin Ailey School for 3 years.
That's
until
no
COVID.
easy feat.
Until she realized that that wasn't what she's going to do for the rest of her life. Grace, same thing, studied acting at Syracuse and went to New York City to see what she might do with that, and was working at Union Square Cafe, which was one of the top wine restaurants in the country. And when COVID hit, they both came home March of 2020, because it felt like New York was going to melt into the center of the earth.
Yes.
And Grace has never left. She's been full-time, and she's got her winemaking certificate from Davis and WSET3. So she's been studying, and last year she was my assistant, and she's officially the assistant winemaker now, and she earned it.
Very cool. Thanks.
Rose works about half-time for the winery, and I think in 2 or 3 years she'll circle back as well. Which is just a huge relief after all this, to know that it can stay in the family and not wind up being owned by a private equity firm or a big corporate.
It's a
situation.
scary thing, because you start this project and just hope.
And
Because
38 years later, it's been tough. It's been hard. It's been wonderful. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but I would hate to see it disappear.
Yeah.
You guys have such a great spot, too.
We're
I
very
feel like
lucky.
it's like as you come into Salina, it's kind of the first that welcome you in, and you can see it from the road, and it's beautiful, and
my husband, William Martin, is responsible for all of that. He located the property. There came a time back in the mid-'90s when Corison Winery was finally mature. It was selling what it made, and there was a downturn in the economy, and we thought, boy, I wonder if this is a little window where we might be able to find a vineyard. And so you've seen those wonderful old soil maps from, I think, the 30s. He went off looking for Bale Gravelly Loam for me. I don't ask for much. Between Rutherford and Salina.
Pleasanton and Bale.
I think they're almost the
Yes,
same.
yeah.
I don't know. Two names for the same thing. And he looked for quite a while, and unfortunately for us, many of the right soil was up against the hills with trophy homes on it. That was not an option. But he came home months later. One day he said, that place on the highway, it's been for sale for years. It was on the market for 8 years. That's how much things have changed since then. That was 28 years ago.
Wow.
That's Bale Gravelly Loam. And so we were told that it was AXR1, and that the house was condemned. And so that sounded like bare land to us. So on a complete whim, we put an offer in for bare land, and we were talking turkey with the gentleman in Bordeaux who owned it, and it was just a miracle. We literally bought that for bare land, only to find out while we were in escrow that
It wasn't AXR.
it was St. George.
Yeah.
And Leo Nachbauer, you may know the Nachbauer
Yeah,
family.
of course. Yeah.
They lived there, and Leo Nachbauer planted it in 1971. He was still alive, and we interviewed him while we were in escrow and found out that no, it's St. George. And my husband had been building things all his life, and he saw two things with the supposedly condemned house. It had a good foundation and a relatively new roof, but it looked like it had been taken off the tax rolls the year before, given zero value. It wasn't technically...
That would never happen again.
No, but nobody would leave a house looking like that either. There was rusted, torn screening on the porch, and the foundation under the porch was crumbled, and there was corrugated iron in one window and plywood in another. It had been a flop house. People had played cards in there. And so, I mean, it really did... Yeah. You could believe it, but it wasn't technically
It had good bones still, sort of.
It had good bones. And we were given the opportunity to, in 3 months, if we could have somebody living in it, we could finance it as a residence, which was much more attractive.
Yeah.
We painted it all white. We took off the rusted screening, shored up the foundation under the porch. The foundation under the house was new and in good shape. We painted everything white, replumbed it, rewired it, and in 3 months had people living in it, renting it.
And then today is that...
And it looked really awful until quite a few years ago, William...
Painted it?
Renovated. It's a beautiful little gem right now.
Yeah.
But he designed the winery. He found the property. He designed the winery. He's responsible for how beautiful it looks. Yeah, and so it is kind of a nice entry to St. Helena.
Very cool. And then today, is that still a house, or is that a tasting space?
Well, everybody advised us to turn it into a tasting room. We wanted to keep it a house. And so William has his office in the upstairs. It's a very small house. And Rose and Grace, when they're here, Grace is living in Napa now, but until she moved to Napa, was living there. Rose lives there when she's in town.
Perfect.
And we're not in the business of having trade people stay there. That's another whole job. But occasionally we'll use it as a...
Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah.
And then the label. So you've got this piece of...
it's a very old...
vase, right?
It's a very old life symbol.
Yeah.
Taken from a vase excavated from what is today Iraq. So from the Middle East, where humans first settled down and started to grow things, and they made wine because they found tartrates in their pots. Grapes are unusual in having so much tartaric acid. And that's also the part of the world where the Vitis vinifera evolved. The European wine grape variety comes from that.
Mesopotamia, right there.
Yeah. So this is a very old life symbol based on rain. And I don't know if we can see the cork has this other very old life symbol based on a sprouting seed, also 7,000 years old.
Wow.
And that's what wine does for me. It plugs me into life. Wine is alive. It's the result of a whole series of living systems. When I took that wine appreciation class when I was 19, 52 or 3 years ago, I fell in love with wine for all the usual reasons. So you share it with friends and family. It's delicious. It's good makes food taste better. But for me, what really pulled me in was that it's a whole series of living systems. As a biologist, I'm still learning something new every day. I'm still studying biology because it's so fascinating and we know so little about it.
Yeah. That's amazing that you found that and did that. It's really beautiful. I used to fly helicopters over Iraq, and we flew over Babylon, Hanging Towers of Babylon. So all that area, I mean, now it's like, a lot of desert. But there's a very narrow space in there where there's just so much agriculture and so green, and you never think think of it that way. But yeah, that was the center of everything.
And culturally, there's not a lot of alcohol consumed now in that part of the world, but 7,000 years ago,
there's a lot of grapes grown there, though.
Yeah,
but they just make raisins
of table
out of
fruit.
it.
Yeah, and raisins. Yeah.
So I used to remember landing in Afghanistan, and you would smell that, like the grapes, because there was just tons of grapes everywhere, and you would just bring you back to home right away.
Yeah.
Crazy, yeah. But anyway, that's a really cool story.
And you made a note about the cork.
Yes,
as
the
you
cork
opened
is
the bottle.
like, this is a
That's one fancy cork.
beautiful fancy cork. For the cork nerds out, the cork dorks.
Yeah, give us a little
54 millimeter,
so that size,
which is I think one of the longest ones they make.
And we also are, for the last 5 years or so, instead of 24 millimeter diameter, we put in 25s.
Oh, I noticed it was a
little harder to get out.
Heavier.
And I think that's going to help both the quality and the fact that it's a millimeter
extra
wider than most corks. And so it's...
Oh, that's smart. Is that a special request?
Yeah. And this cork is something like $3 a piece or something silly.
But, like you said, you're making wines for long haul. Mm-hmm. And what's the most important thing
they're going to outlive me.
Is the cork, right? Yeah. That's incredible. And original corks are sustainable. And I know you guys are
very
huge proponents of sustainability. So talk to me about your sustainability program and how you've decided on your glass and all that.
It's always been important to us, and you're talking about the weight of the bottle. Everybody's concerned about that these days because we have to ship these bottles around, and if you're shipping a big heavy bottle, it just takes more fossil fuels. So yeah, I was never interested in those really big heavy bottles. There's an Italian bottle of this shape back when I first started a bottle that I loved. It was called the Elite bottle, and then a French company started to knock it off, and now people knock it off all over the world. And I just think it's just such a pretty elegant shape. It's slightly tapered and tall, has a nice presence, but it's not chunky. Mm-hmm. So that's the bottle we started with from the very beginning, and that's 38.
Wow.
38 vintages in the barrel, so it's like 36 vintages that we've bottled. But other things, when we designed the winery, that was really important. We designed a lot of passive cooling into the winery because one of the reasons we grow grapes, such good grapes, is that we have very cold nights. The fog comes in every night from San Francisco Bay. Temperatures plummet from having been in the 90s down into the 50s, sometimes even the 40s. And so if you can, you notice the barn has cupolas, and they're working cupolas. And so what happens when the fog comes in, there are louvered louvers, I guess, in the bottom floor. And so the cold air gets pulled in because the warm air is sucked out the top. Mm-hmm. And that's why barns were built like that. That's cupolas before air conditioning. So we save a lot of energy just keeping the winery cool, which is really important for wine quality. We've got to keep the barrel room quite cool.
Green solar panels? Not just green, but they are actually green color.
I mentioned that William designed the winery, and
this is really cool.
We wanted to be solar, but solar panels can be pretty ugly. That's changing. Mm-hmm. So he eventually found a company in Barcelona that designed photovoltaic glass for skyscrapers, so that the whole building could collect energy. And then after a while, they started making panels, and he was able to send them a sample of the roof color, and they were able to match it as well as they could. It's a model color, so it's not exact. But from a distance, it completely goes away.
Yeah.
And we make enough electrons to get us through harvest. We're completely off the grid. Wow. We all drive electric cars. We have a Monarch tractor. We have an electric forklift. And just slowly over time, we've electrified everything. What else do? We just became Napa Green, both winery and vineyard. I've been farming Kronos Vineyard organically for 28 years, since the day we bought it, because it was the right thing to do. But I didn't have the bandwidth to certify, and it's expensive. There's a lot of bureaucracy. So all these years, I farmed organically but was not certified. Grace arrived, and 2 years ago she got us certified CCOF.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm not doing anything differently. Not a single thing.
It's too bad you can't like retroact it. Like, look,
Yeah.
this is what we've been
Well,
doing.
People that know.
I talk
people that
about
don't
it.
know.
I talk about it. Yeah. So it's all the things that come with that. All the bugs, and our critters get other critters and bugs, and we've got barn owl boxes and a million bluebird boxes, and we don't have any trouble with leafhoppers.
Cool.
Yeah. So, and the voles, the hawks, and we have a perch for the hawks, and houses for the owls.
Do you guys till, or are you non-till,
Well,
or what's your opinion on that? I'm curious. Sorry to get so nerdy about
no, it's
viticulture.
okay. I'm learning a lot. So
I'm still trying to sort this out.
Yeah.
Because when I first started farming organically, I had Amigo Bob. I don't know if you would have remembered. You were pretty young
No.
back then, I think. But Amigo Bob was a
That's great.
what?
Amigo Bob, this is
It's a
great.
good name.
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah,
name.
I love it. He was wonderful. Anyway,
Yeah.
he was an organic consultant, and so I hired him when we bought Kronos. And back in the day, they were way more worried about nitrogen, so they wanted us to plant nitrogenous cover crops, and he wanted it to be tilled in almost immediately, so it didn't nitrify and go back. The nitrogen didn't nitrify and go back into the atmosphere. And so he advocated, mowing with one tractor and then following behind it with a spader. So we did that for a long, long time, and would hoe plow to get the weeds in the vine row. Now I'm actively trying to sort this, because regenerative farming, they're much more worried about carbon, and I'm not sure it's completely compatible. So tilling. So for carbon sequestration, you don't want to till, and for a lot of other reasons too. Temperature of the soil, life of the soil. My soils are wildly alive because they've been organically farmed for 28 years. So now we're also, with the fires from a few years ago, William is very worried that non-tilled vineyards might
Be a fire source.
might be an avenue for fire to get to the winery. So that's one of the things we're considering. So I'm trying to walk both lines. For instance, we just mowed, because bud break's happening right now. We just mowed, and that's for frost protection. We had sheep in
We saw
last year
the
and this
sheep.
year.
I
And the
love
cool
the
thing
sheep.
is that they mow, and they could get in when it's too wet for a tractor. So they mowed everything, and now it's bud break. And so now, as we can, we're mowing where we need to, and it's not a hoe plow anymore, but it's a power harrow to get all the weeds there. So we'll power harrow everything, and we'll mow. I'd love to not spade, but I'll start playing with that. I'm
Yeah.
trying to.
It's interesting. So our
Yeah.
philosophy is we hoe plow, get rid of the weeds, and then we go behind and till disc. But we find ourselves needing a whole lot less water that way, because we keep that fine layer of dirt on top that keeps the moisture down. And people that we see, our neighbors anyway, at least in our specific area, if they don't, then they have these cracks and you lose the water, and they're having to irrigate every week. So we figure, well, we're tilling, which I know we've talked the carbon sequestration, but it also helps to keep the moisture in, and then we're pulling less water out of the soil or out of the groundwater for irrigation.
And there's also the question of competition too. Kronos isn't very vigorous, so I'm watching that as well
Right.
with a permanent cover. I don't know. I'm actively.
It's interesting because I've heard
Figuring
both
this
ways,
out.
and I don't know if anyone knows. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think it's all important, and every site is different. So I mean, there can't be rules.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm in the middle of that. I
Usually
learn
the
something
farm-
new every day.
The farmer knows the best at their site.
Yeah,
Usually.
yeah, and we figure it out over time.
Perfect.
And every year, Mother Nature sends us something new. So,
You know what they say? If you should make gambling legal, why let farmers have all the fun?
I have a good log to kind of close us out, unless
Let's
you have
hear it.
another one too.
No, I have expended all of my logs.
An officer was flagged down by a tourist looking for a pizza restaurant.
Kathy, where would you send them?
Yeah.
To
Which pizza restaurant?
pizza
if you want
restaurant?
good pizza.
I would definitely in St. Helena.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Tomatina.
Good.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
I'm big on the station right now too.
I like it. I just haven't gone.
You haven't
much.
gotten into it.
But Ciccio for me, if we're expanding.
Ciccio, same. The
Ciccio's
pepperoni pizza at
pretty
Ciccio
good.
with the hot honey is my favorite.
Mm.
I think it's at Station. They've sold me because you can get a side of Gott's Ranch.
Oh
like
my God.
a big side of ranch with
Hillary
pizza.
would inject ranch if it was legal into her body.
I definitely would. It's
With it.
so good. Well, if we wanted to get your wine or come visit, how would we go about that?
Give us a call. You can Corison.com is our website. You can get through to us there. You can give us a call, and we're open every day from 10 to 5, except Christmas, I think.
And I've done the tasting, and it was awesome.
Oh, good. I missed you.
It was so much fun.
I didn't. Was I there?
We briefly
Yeah,
checked in.
okay.
And, yeah, but yeah, it was good. Thank you, Kathy.
You're so
All
welcome.
right.
Yay! Cheers!
Thank you.
It was fun.
Yay.
Cheers.